Okay, guys, welcome back to another Big 12 prediction video, preview and prediction video. I'm Matthew. Chandler's not with me again tonight, but I will be bringing you Oklahoma State through West Virginia, the Big 12. And before I start this video, will you please leave a like at any point during this video, and please subscribe down below if you want more content like this. Um, if you don't like it, leave me a comment. But anyways, here we go. Oklahoma State, 7-6 last year, 3-6 in the Big 12. Their offense ranked 13th in the country with 38.4 points per game. Their defense was 97th in the country with 32.5 points per game. 5-year recruiting average is 39th in the country and 38th last year in 2019. Okay, key losses. Last 2 years, you've lost quarterbacks. You lost Mason Rudolph, who is an NFL player, and I believe on the Pittsburgh Steelers now, and I like that pick by the Steelers. I think he's a decent and capable starting NFL quarterback. I don't know if he'll get that opportunity with Pittsburgh, but I do believe he will get it with someone in the future. It kind of reminds me of A.J. McCarron out of college. Obviously, he played in a much more open offense, but the body type, the release, all of that, all the measurables look the same to me. Quarterback Taylor Cornelius is the one they lost after last year. He had 3,978 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. They also lose running back Justice Hill. He had 930 yards on 5.9 yards per carry. I think he was injured a bit last year, which kind of hurt his production because years before that, he was a do-it-all type of player. Caught pass out of the backfield, rushed a lot, would go out wide sometimes. They throw him the ball. They've always been loaded at wide receiver and running backs. They struggle, obviously, defense or 97th in the country. That's where the problem's been. They lose their best defensive lineman, though, in Jordan Brailford. He led the team with 17 tackles for loss and 10 sacks. So by far their best defensive lineman. They also lose Justin Phillips, their leading tackler, and was a 3-year starter. They also lose Ken Magruder, was a starting safety for them. So they lose probably their best player at each unit on defense. They lose Jordan Belford off the defensive line, Justin Phillips off the linebacker, and Ken Magruder's from the safeties. Now, if you're counting safeties and corners, he's probably the second best player because we'll get to the first best player and probably the best cornerback in the Big 12. We might as well get to him now. A.J. Green. Guy's a freak. Guy's a stud. He's going to be an NFL player, probably be a second-day player. I don't think he'll be first. Cornerbacks in the Big 12 don't get the respect every other conference does, which let's just go on a little bit of a rant here. Big 12 defenses aren't as good as everyone else because everyone else's offenses aren't as open and aren't throwing the ball all over the field like the Big 12 does. I do agree, Big 12 defense, I'm not saying they're good. They're not good, but they're not as bad as you would as the media and other people would like to tell you. They are better than that. Just like the Big Ten defenses are worse than what you see in stats because the Big Ten doesn't have that many spread offenses. When you spread it out the field and you throw it all over the place and you're running to strong side of the field, and you're running all different types of trick plays, and you have a lot of big outside threats at wide receiver and a lot of short guys in the slot that are fast, you tend to give up more points because there's more talent on the field. And that's why I believe Big 12 defenses are as bad as people think they are. They're really not that bad. And that proves during bowl season when you see their points per game drop by about a touchdown every year. So they go from around, I think last year they were at 32 points per game as a conference. They dropped down to around 26, so 6 points per game difference. I think that was around what they averaged in bowl season and regular season. But anyways, see, A.J. Green's a very good player. He was one of the only guys I saw stop Colin Johnson, Little Jordan Humphrey. Slow down. I wouldn't say stop, but slow them down last year with his physicality. He's a big cornerback. I think he's 6'2", and he just likes to get up and press wide receivers. He's a very good player. They also returned running back Chuba Hubbard, who actually played better than Justice Hill versus my Texas Longhorns last year and had more yards from scrimmage than Justice Hill did last year. He also had as many touchdowns with 9. And then they return an absolute freak at wide receiver in Tylan Wallace. 86 receptions, 1,491 yards, and 12 touchdowns. He had over 200 yards versus my Longhorns, and I think he had like 130 in the first half We were playing with our backup corners, but he is a freak. He knows how to high point the ball. Him and Hakeem Butler cut from the same cloth, 6'4", 6'5", can go up, get the ball. Hakeem, I think he's a little bit faster and a little bit has a little bit more leaping ability than Hakeem Butler, but Hakeem Butler is a little bit taller at 6'7". Tylan Wallace, I believe, is only 6'4", just still tall, but he's a freak at wide receiver. The quarterback this year looks like it's going to be between redshirt freshman Spencer Sanders and transfer quarterback Drew Brown. They have not named a quarterback for the opener, and as we speak, that game is being played. I don't know the score. It doesn't matter because I'm going to take Oklahoma State, preview into that. Oklahoma State's going to beat Oregon State. But anyways, Drew Brown, 37 touchdowns and 15 interceptions and on 62% completion percentage when he was at Hawaii. I expect him to start. Now, I'm going to check after this and see if I was right, but I would expect him to start. I wouldn't even, they're playing Oregon State, so I could see them playing both guys, kind of getting a feel, and then they play McNeese State after that. So getting a feel of who they want to play, and then they go into Big 12 play knowing who their quarterback is. I think the first 3 games may just be a feel-out because you got Oregon State, McNeese State, and Tulsa. Now, let's get to that schedule. Right after those 3 teams I named, Oregon State, McNeese State, Tulsa. They start on the road with Oregon State. Doesn't matter. It's a win. McNeese State, win. Win at Tulsa. And they play Texas to open up the Big 12 at Texas. They have dominated us. I'm not going to lie. They have dominated us the past decade. We're winning this year. I don't care who they have at quarterback. We know who our quarterback is, and that's all that matters. We're winning this game. They play Kansas State. That's a win. They play at Texas Tech, loss. Bye week, then they play Baylor. That's a win. They lose at Iowa State. They lose versus TCU. They go into a bye week. Then they play Kansas. That's a win. Win at West Virginia. Loss at Oklahoma. That finishes them 7-5, making a bowl game. I think you can plug pretty much anyone. This is kind of like Washington State. You can plug anyone in, they're going to be good. The difference is Mason Rudolph was great. Taylor Cornelius was good. That's why he went 7-5 or 7-6 last year. That's why he went, I believe, 9-3 or 9-4 the year before. Good and great usually gets you 2 to 3 wins at the quarterback position. That's why I think you'll go 7-5 because I think Spencer Sanders or Drew Brown will be good enough to get you to that mark. TCU is the next team we have on tap, and they went 7-6 last year, 7-6 last year, and 4-5 in the Big 12, which I think is very impressive because the quarterback play last year was atrocious. Starting out with points per game, which proves that point. 107 in the country, 23.5 points per game. Defense, always good under Gary Patterson. He is a magnificent coach. I think he's the longest or second longest tenured head coach. It's either him or Kirk Ferentz. Returning production, they're 85th. Recruiting, again, TCU was not a good program before he got there. Their recruiting over the last 5 years is 29th in the country, 33rd in 2019. He's always going to be in the top 35. He's a great coach. Key losses, defensive end, Ben Bagnu, leader in sacks 8, or Ben Bagnu, however you say it. He's a very good player, beast. First round, I think he was a first or second round pick in the NFL. He was he was either first or second round. And 18.5 tackles for loss. I'm going to be honest with you, Charles Omenihu, who won Defensive Lineman of the Year in the Big 12. This guy probably should have won it. I'm a Texas fan, but I'm not a unrealistic Texas fan. I'm not crazy like that. They also lose defensive end LJ Collier, who was also in the NFL. He was second in sacks with 6 and tackles for loss with 11.5. They also lose their quarterback on defense, who provided a lot of physicality when he was out there. The problem is he missed a lot of last season. He was probably worth the win. They probably would have gone 8-5 with him out there for most of the year. Ty Summers, who's their physical leader. And they also lost 6 of the 9 top tacklers. For most teams, I'd be worried about that. I'm not super worried about that because of Gary Patterson. Again, great defensive mind, great defensive head coach. I think an NFL team should jump on this guy personally, but I don't think he's ever gotten the chance to or gotten an offer to. Maybe he wouldn't want it. Key returning running back Siwo Olunulia, it's hard to say, and Darius Anderson combined for over 1,300 yards and 4.8 yards per carry. Darius Anderson will probably be the starter with Siwo as the backup, but that's a good running back combination. They also return another beast in the Big 12 at wide receiver, Jalen Reagor. This guy had 72 receptions with 1,061 yards and 9 touchdowns with the quarterback trio of Sean Robinson, Michael Collins, and Grayson Molstein combined for 18 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. He had half of those touchdowns. This guy is a monster. He, in my opinion, might be out. You know what I'll say? I think he's the best wide receiver in this conference because of who he is surrounded by on the offensive end. There isn't much. Four quarterbacks are going to be competing for the starting job, and that's why I don't think they're going to. I think it's kind of a carbon copy of last year. They're going to have Max Duggan, a four-star recruit, Alex Delton from Kansas State to transfer, Michael Collins, and Justin Rogers. If it were me and I was a betting man, Alex Delton was named the starter. He will not play more than 4 games this year. There's no way. If Gary Patterson expects to be bowl eligible, they need to replace him. He's not a good quarterback. I've seen enough of him. He is Nick Fitzgerald. That's who I think he is. That's who he reminds me of play style-wise. He's not a very good passer. He can run the ball. If you're looking for a safe quarterback, he's your guy. I think you can probably go 5-7, maybe 6-6. If you want to go for broke, go with Max Duggan, the 4-star recruit. Ohio State recruited him. A bunch of other big-time programs recruited him. Go with him. They also had not a red shirt, a transfer in Matthew Baldwin go from Ohio State to TCU. He was ruled ineligible, though, so he won't be available this year. Like I said, I think it's Max Duggan. Once Alex Delton plays the first 4 or 5 games and Gary Patterson realizes, man, this guy's not that good. He should have realized that playing him last year. Maybe he didn't. Actually, Kansas State beat them last year, and he wasn't even the quarterback. Skylar Thompson was. So I don't know why he thinks he should be the starting quarterback there. I digress. TCU, I have him at 6-6 because you told me Alex Delton's the starter, so I think he's only going to play 4 or 5 games. I'm not the coach. I'm not in charge. You win the spin starting for me. You win Arkansas Pine Bluff. You're on a bye. You play at Purdue. This could be a win. Purdue loses a lot, but I have them down for a loss. Then they win versus SMU, which could be a loss. Shane Buechele, our backup transfer, he's a good quarterback. He can play. And Sonny Dykes is now the coach there. So that could be a loss, but I have them down for a win. Win versus Kansas, a loss at Iowa State, a bye, loss at Kansas State, loss versus Texas, win versus Oklahoma State, loss versus Baylor, win at Texas Tech, loss at Oklahoma, win at West Virginia. That gets you to, I believe, 6-6, and it does, and you'll be bowl eligible. I think you could probably get to 8-4. But if you play Alex Delton the whole year, you could go 4-8. So I went in between again, 6-6. It's always a safe bet to go in between of what your high and low are. So I did that because when I do that, it's kind of like an unknown thing. And TCU is a huge unknown for me because I think their defense is going to be good, even though they lost the players because of Gary Patterson. But I don't know about the quarterback position. That's the biggest position in sports, the biggest position in football. And I don't know. It's a big question mark with you guys. And finally, we get to my team, the Texas Longhorns, 10-4, 7-2 in the Big 12 last year. Offensive ranked 47th with 31.1 points per game. Defensive ranked 57th with 25.9 points per game. Returning production 121st, very low. That's part of the reason why we're a year away, in my opinion. I think this is a college football playoff contender next year. This year is a Big 12 contender. 5-year recruiting, 10th. 3rd in 2019, and we're 6th for next year as well. And we've gotten 14 recruits last month. In the month of July, we had 14 recruits, I believe. It may have been in August, I'm not sure. But I know in either July or August, we had 14 guys commit to Texas for the 2021 and 2020 years. There's a lot of momentum. Tom Herman, I believe in 100%. I love the hire when we hired him. I was kind of iffy on Charlie Strong, and obviously he didn't pan out. But Tom Herman, I was very high on, and I'm still high on him. I think he's a fabulous coach. Key losses. Wide receiver, Little Jordan Humphrey. It's going to be hard to replace. How he went undrafted is beyond me. You know, you go to the Underwear Olympics, and that's what you call the combine, and you base it off that. I think that is idiotic. If you watch this guy play, he knows how to high point the football. He breaks tackles. That's what we called him, Little Yak at Texas. That's what us Texas fans called him. The guy caught the ball and would never be brought down by the first guy. He'd always break the first tackle, always get more yards after it. He was amazing. I wish he would have stayed because when he got that late draft grade, I said, man, you need to stay. I thought he was going to be a 5th or 6th round pick. And either way, he should have stayed because he went undrafted. But 86 receptions, 1,176 yards, 9 touchdowns. The Saints got him undrafted. He's going to be huge for them in the future. I don't think he'll be a big player this year, but in the future, him and Michael Thomas, watch out. I think he will play for them. And if not, if you don't like him a wide receiver, I think he can beef up and be a very good tight end. All 3 leading tacklers gone: P.J. Lott, Gary Johnson, and Anthony Wheeler. And people say, well, you should be worried. Those are 3 guys you're going to miss, leading tacklers. The only guy I'm personally going to miss is Gary Johnson. He brought a lot of speed, a lot of heart. He's a fabulous player. He was just picked up by some team as an undrafted free agent. I know he was an undrafted free agent with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they released him. I believe the Washington Redskins picked him up, if I'm not wrong. I could be wrong on that. But Anthony Wheeler just didn't fit the scheme. He wasn't fast enough. I think he was really only out there because we were thin at the linebacker position, and we didn't want Adelaide Adeli out there who's going to play this year for us. He's a very good player, but we didn't want to be that raw at linebacker. He would have been a true freshman if he played last year. Anthony Wheeler was at least a 2-year starter. I think he played a little bit his sophomore year, but he just didn't fit. He was not fast sideline to sideline, but he's a big hitter. I think if he would have went to an SEC school, he would have been a very good player. He was still good to play for us, but he would have been way more productive at an SEC school because he's more of a downhill player, a thumper. And then PJ Locke, I think we'll miss his intangible type stuff like hard hitting, leadership, stuff like that. We'll also miss him with versatility. He played all over the field, played safety, played nickel, played in the box sometimes and blitz. Good player. Another player we will miss. Defensive lineman of the year. Like I said, he probably shouldn't have got it, but he was deserving. But Ben Bagu for TCU, I thought should have got it. But he had 18 tackles for loss. Charles Omenihu did 9.5 sacks and was the Big 12 defensive lineman of the year. Absolute beast. After the first 2 games, he was an absolute monster from the first 2 games on. We're going to miss him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But key returning, and this is why everyone is so high. From when I hear Kirk Herbstreit, Joel Klatt, I don't consider myself them, but hopefully someday. But quarterback Sam Ehlinger, I think he's a right-handed Tim Tebow. I know people say that. I think he's a better passer than Tim Tebow, though. And he's a little bit smaller muscle mass-wise, but leadership, heart. He's the type of guy where if you got in a bar fight, you want him on your side. He's going to give anything and everything for you in the game of football. He's a good human being. He's smart. I've heard he started to know the offense where he's making his own checks at the line of scrimmage, so that's really exciting. And he had 41 total touchdowns last year and only 6 turnovers. He had 2 interceptions versus Maryland. Went all the way through the season, threw 2 interceptions versus Kansas. Those were his only interceptions other than the Big 12 championship game. He threw one other one. That's very impressive to go that many games in a row. And he broke the Big 12 record, most pass attempts in a row without an interception. He's very underrated. Hopefully people will start talking about him this year. Hopefully we don't build him up and then he doesn't show up. I think he'll show up. I'm not very worried about that. We also returned stud at wide receiver Colin Johnson, 68 receptions, 985 yards, 7 touchdowns. If he didn't get hurt, that's his big issue is staying healthy, staying on the field. They say the biggest thing for players is availability. Well, he hasn't checked that mark off yet. That's why they have him marked right now as a first-round pick. I think he'll probably fall in the second or third round just because he'll miss games. He's got a frail lower body and he's got bad knees, and I just see him missing a couple games because of that this year. But he would have been over 1,000 yards if he didn't miss games last year. And then the best safety duo in the nation. And if you want to debate that, you can't debate this. They have the best safety room in the whole country. That's not debatable. 2018 class for Texas, maybe one of the best ever. They had three of the top 6 safeties in that class in the whole country. They also had 3 of the top 15 cornerbacks in that class. So that is stacked. So you have Brandon Jones, Caden Stearns, and then B.J. Foster, who might be the most talented out of all of them. And then Demarion Overshawn, who didn't play on defense at all this year. You will see a lot of him this year. Those are 3 of the top 6 safeties, Caden Stearns, B.J. Foster, and Demarion Overshawn from the 2018 class, all on one team. I'm super excited for that. And now for Texas. You want to say 12-0 as a fan. I'm realistic. Like I said, next year is the year we'll have more depth and more experience because most of those guys are going to return. Sam Ellinger will be back. The only guy off the top of my head that won't be there that will truly miss are Colin Johnson and Brandon Jones. I have us going 10-2. I have wins versus Louisiana Tech, a loss versus LSU. That could be a win though. I'm saying this because I think that's what will happen. But in my heart, I want to pick Texas, and I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a very good game. I think this is is going to end up being at the end of the year one of the games that you look back on and mean, wow, that game meant a lot, because I think this could make Texas's season. I think this could make LSU's season. I think you could springboard off this. Whoever wins this game, recruiting wise, college football championship wise, SEC Big 12 championship wise. The win versus Rice, win versus Oklahoma State, a bye. They'll go on the road. They'll beat West Virginia. I hope we beat the snot out of West Virginia. I lost a lot of respect for that team after last year. I didn't like Will Greer in the first place because I think he's highly overrated. We're saying that now in the NFL. And then wins versus Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl. Wins at Kansas. Wins versus Kansas. Wins at TCU. A bye. Win versus Kansas State. Win at Iowa State. And then a loss at Baylor. I think they're going to lose one of the games at Iowa State and Baylor for one simple reason. Tom Herman gets us ready. That's why I think the LSU game will be close. He gets us ready for big games. Those games, if Iowa State and Baylor are as good as I have them being, they'll be big games, so maybe we can beat them. But that's two really hard road games back to back. At Iowa State, at Baylor, I have us splitting, losing to Baylor, beating Iowa State. And then a win at Texas Tech, so I have 10-2. Next, we'll move on to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I have a new coach in Matt Wells, who used to coach at Utah State. He'll get this program turned around. I think he'll be better than Cliff Kingsbury as an overall coach. Cliff Kingsbury pretty much said, I'm going to concentrate on offense, have the defense. I think he'll make this a well-rounded football team in a couple years. They were 16th in the country on offense with 37.3 points per game. On defense, they were 86 with 31.1 points per game. Returning production is 78th in the country. Their 5-year recruiting average is 52nd. It's hard to get people to go to Lubbock, Texas. Cliff Kingsbury didn't have any luck. Maybe Matt Wells will. I think he'll have a little bit better success than 52nd and 61st last year. I think that was a matter of recruits kind of saw writing on the wall, and we're done. Key losses, Antoine Wesley decided to leave after his junior year, and you'll see why here. 88 receptions, 1,410 yards, and 9 touchdowns. It's like reading from the same book. Keem Butler, Tylen Walls, Antoine Wesley. Throw them in a bag, pick them out. They're all the same, all big, all tall, all fast. They can high point the ball. They can run away from people. They're absolute monsters. He's in the NFL now as well. They also lose linebacker Dakota Allen, 61 total tackles, which was 3rd on the team. Key returning. They return Alan Bowman, who is a true freshman. This guy's a stud, and I wish he wouldn't have gotten hurt last year. 2,638 yards, 69% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Like I said, he got hurt last year, punctured his lung. I hope he's back fully healthy, not just because of football. I like to watch him play football because of life. That's a very bad injury, and I hope he's healthy throughout the rest of his life. Tazon Henry, 2nd leading rusher and main back after DeLeon Ward transfer is back. I don't really know why DeLeon Ward transferred. He was a good player while he was there. I know he gave us some problems. I didn't really see Tazon Henry at all. I didn't really notice him when we played him or even watching Texas Tech. I saw a lot of DeLeon Ward, though. And then wide receiver, another big guy, TJ Vasher, 54 receptions, 687 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And he's the cousin of Nathan Vasher, who used to play at Texas as a cornerback and was a stud cornerback for us. And sadly, he's beating us now at Texas Tech. Not beating us wins and losses wise, but beating us on the field with big-time receptions and yardage and touchdowns. I have Texas Tech going 6-6. I'm a lot higher. I'm going to say this, a lot higher on this team than most people are. I think most people see this team as a 3-9 type team. They could be, but I just feel like Alan Bowman comes back. He's a stud. I think Matt Wells is a good enough coach to get this team to play better on defense right away. I think offensively they'll regress a little bit, but Alan Bowman is so good, man. Like I said, 6-6. They'll beat Montana. They'll beat UTEP. Montana State, sorry. They'll beat UTEP. They'll beat Arkansas. They'll have a bye. They'll lose to Oklahoma. A win versus Oklahoma State. A loss at Baylor. A loss to Iowa State. A win at Kansas. A loss at West Virginia. A loss at TCU. A win at Kansas State. And a loss at Texas. And I was pretty fair there because, a loss at West Virginia, they could easily beat West Virginia. West Virginia is not going to be a good team this year. They lost way too much, and we'll get into them next. But I think 6-6 is definitely realistic. I think if you told me this team's going to go 4-8, I believe that. I don't see anything worse than 4-8, though. I really don't. I think 4-8 to 6-6, they'll fall in between there. And usually, like I said, I'll pick in the middle. But this is the team I'm high on, so I'm going to go on the high side of that with 6-6. We're going to be moving on to West Virginia. Like I said, lost a lot, but on offense last year, they were dynamic. 42.2 points per game, 10th in the country. Defense, they were 27.2 points per game, 67th in the country. Returning production, 105th. 5-year recruiting average, 43rd. And then last year was 48th. New coach, Neil Brown. I think this is a really good hire. He comes from Troy. He turned them around. They had a bunch of 8, 9, 10 win seasons under him. He will get this turnaround. I like all the hires in this conference. Chris Kleiman at Kansas State, Matt Wells at Texas Tech, and Neil Brown at West Virginia. Most likely one of those will fail. And if I had to put my money, I would probably, even though I just said Matt Wells, I would probably put it on him because, like I said, Chris Kleiman has shown he can win at a high level, even if it is at FCS in an FCS school at like a North Dakota State. And then Neil Brown's proven that when he can win at Troy. I mean, he beat LSU when he was at Troy. He's a good coach. They also lose Dana Holgorsen, though, who's a very good coach offensively. I think Neil Brown will try to make this team more balanced, as was, like I said, Matt Wells at Texas Tech will try to do. Key losses, Will Grier, over 3,500 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And I know I said he's overrated, and yes, when I meant as an NFL prospect, people were talking second, third round. That guy's a 6th-round draft pick. He had 6 years in college. I would expect you to be good if you have 6 years in college. Most people would be. And everyone that plays under Dana Holgorsen is going to throw for a lot of yards. I mean, Geno Smith, Pat White was under Rich Rodriguez, but Geno Smith and others under Dana Holgorsen, you're going to throw for crazy amounts of yards, crazy touchdowns. And he's also had a lot of good wide receivers around him. David Sills and Gary Jennings both had over 900 yards and 13 touchdowns each. I just think it was the perfect situation for Will Grier, and I wouldn't expect him to probably be either a backup quarterback his whole life, his whole NFL career, or may not even be in the league. I don't think he's a very good player. Pro-wise. College-wise, he was fantastic under West Virginia. He was decent under Florida when he was there. They also lose their 4 best defensive players. Linebacker David Long, safety Kenny Robinson transferred, safety Drayvon Henry, and defensive tackle Kenny Bigelow. They had their 3 safeties that were all poised for playing time transfer, including Kenny Robinson, who I mentioned. He was rated as the 2nd best pro prospect by Pro Football Focus at safety, so that's a huge loss. Key returning, they returned Joshua Norwood, and that's about it for their team. At cornerback, he led the defensive pass defended. This team loses a lot. That's part of the reason. Neil Brown, if all these people came back and they had Neil Brown at coach, I think they, again, compete for a Big 12 championship, be up there with Texas, Iowa State, Baylor, Oklahoma. I don't see that this year. In the future, I could probably see that under Neil Brown, but this year I have them going 4-8, and that's pretty generous to me. They have wins at James Madison, loss at Mizzou, and they could lose that game to James Madison. James Madison is a good FCS team. Win versus North Carolina State. I was down on North Carolina State, but I shouldn't have been that down. I should have had them. I regret putting it, but I did, so I have to put it for them as well. I regret putting a win or a loss for North Carolina State, so that means a win for West Virginia. Win at Kansas, a bye week, a loss at Texas, a loss to Iowa State, a loss at Oklahoma, a bye week, a loss at Baylor. Then they're going to beat Texas Tech, and that's their last win of the season because they're going to lose at Oklahoma State, or lose at Kansas State, lose versus Oklahoma State, and then lose to TCU. I have them at 4-8. I think it's just going to be a tough year for them, and I'm glad because the amount of class that fan base and school had last year I didn't really like, so I don't mind if they go 4-8. That's really last year. I'm not gonna lie. I hated them more than Oklahoma last year. I wish we would have played them in the Big 12 championship game. I wanted one more shot at them. We should have beat them there. We had a couple injuries and a couple boneheaded plays in that game. That was probably our worst defensive played game the whole year. It really frustrates me still talking about it even. But anyways, that will do it for Oklahoma State through West Virginia in the Big 12. Thanks for watching. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Thank you.